The year was 2117, and Earth had long been under the oppressive rule of the intergalactic dominion. What was once a thriving planet had been reduced to a mere colony, its people enslaved by an alien empire that spanned across the stars. The dominion was vast, its reach unstoppable, and humanity seemed doomed to fade into obscurity. But even in the darkest of times, sparks of defiance remained. Deep within the crumbling city of New Alexandria, a small group of rebels made their stand. Captain Elena Ward, a former soldier and the leader of the resistance, stood at the forefront of this revolution. With her sharp mind and unyielding will, she inspired those around her to believe that humanity was not finished. The turning point came when a Dominion supply ship, carrying essential resources to fuel their war machine, was detected entering the atmosphere. It was heavily guarded, but Captain Ward knew that this was their chance. A strike against the Dominion's supply lines would send a message to their alien overlords: humanity would not be cowed. "Are we ready?" Elena's voice was steady, though her heart raced with anticipation. "We're set, Captain," replied Lieutenant Marcus Lang, her most trusted ally. "The team's in position, and the tech is good to go. We just need to hit them fast and hard." Without another word, Elena gave the order. The rebels, armed with stolen Dominion technology and human-made weapons, launched their attack. A series of calculated strikes disabled the ship's defenses, allowing the rebels to board. The battle was fierce, but the element of surprise worked in their favor. For every alien that fell, humanity's resolve grew stronger. By the time the Dominion realized what was happening, it was too late. The rebels had secured the ship, and the alien soldiers were either captured or destroyed. It was a decisive victory, and the first in what would become humanity's long fight for freedom. News of the victory spread across the globe, sparking a flame of resistance in every corner of Earth. People, once oppressed, began to believe that they could reclaim their world. However, this victory was just the beginning. The Dominion would not take this challenge lightly, and Captain Ward knew that they were about to face a much larger battle. The enemy would retaliate, and humanity's fight for survival would become a war for the stars. "Today, we fight for Earth," Elena said to her soldiers as they celebrated their hard-won victory. "Tomorrow, we take the fight to them." The spark of rebellion had been lit, and humanity's incredible journey to power and glory was just beginning. The victory over the Dominion's fleet had sent ripples throughout the galaxy. It was a triumph for humanity, but also a signal to every alien race that Earth's rebellion could no longer be ignored. The question now was, could humanity stand on its own, or would it need help from other civilizations to rise against the overwhelming might of the Dominion? Captain Elena Ward knew that Earth's victory was just the beginning. The Dominion would come back stronger, and humanity would need more than just its ingenuity and will to win. It needed allies, and the galaxy was full of factions, some friendly, some hostile. But the odds were stacked against humanity. The human race had been isolated for centuries, considered primitive by the majority of galactic civilizations. They would have to prove themselves worthy of trust, but it wouldn't be easy. In the aftermath of the battle, Elena called for a council of war. Earth's top generals and strategists were gathered aboard the Resolute, along with representatives from the various rebel groups across the galaxy. The room was filled with tension, every voice raised in debate over what their next move should be. "We need to forge alliances," Elena said, standing before the council. Her eyes, though tired, burned with a fierce determination. "If we're going to win this war, we cannot do it alone." The room fell silent as the implications of her words sank in. The very idea of uniting with alien species, some of whom had never known peace, was a daunting task. Elena knew this, but time was running out. The Dominion wouldn't rest. They would retaliate swiftly. "We don't have the luxury of hesitation," Elena continued. "The Dominion will rebuild, and if we don't act quickly, Earth will be destroyed. We need allies to make sure that doesn't happen." Lieutenant Marcus Lang, who had been her closest ally from the beginning, stepped forward, pulling up holographic maps of the galaxy. "We have 3 options for potential allies: the Cathar, a race of technologically advanced beings, but notorious for their xenophobia; the Visari, a warrior race, whose thirst for combat might align with our cause, and the Elira, a peaceful species with a strong emphasis on diplomacy, but they're notoriously cautious and distrustful of war. Elena nodded, considering each option. She knew that time was of the essence, and each decision carried its own risks. After a long silence, she spoke. We'll need to approach the Cathar first. They have the technology we need, and their knowledge of the Dominion strategies could be invaluable. But we'll have to be careful. We'll need to prove ourselves to them, show that we can stand toe-to-toe with the Dominion. Elena's decision was met with mixed reactions. Some of the council members were hesitant, knowing that the Cathar were a fiercely proud race, unwilling to trust outsiders easily. Others felt that the risk was worth it. Regardless, it was clear that the future of humanity depended on these fragile alliances. The next few weeks were filled with delicate negotiations. A human envoy, led by Elena, made its way to the Cathar homeworld, a fortress-like planet known as Cathara. The journey was fraught with danger, as the Cathar were known to attack any ship that entered their space without permission. But Elena had come prepared, with the understanding that diplomacy alone wouldn't be enough. As the human ships approached Cathara's orbital defenses, Elena and her team held their breath. They were at the mercy of the Cathar now. Prepare for anything, Elena whispered to her crew as their ships were scanned by the Cathar defense systems. A tense moment passed, and then, unexpectedly, the Cathar opened communications. A towering figure appeared on the holographic screen, the Cathar ambassador, his presence imposing and regal. His dark skin shimmered with strange bioluminescence, and his piercing eyes scrutinized Elena with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. You are bold to come here, human, the Cathar ambassador's voice was a low rumble. Why should we help you? You are nothing but an insignificant species that has been enslaved by the Dominion. Elena met his gaze unwaveringly. We've proven that we can fight. And we're offering something that the Dominion cannot, the strength of unity. We want to free the galaxy, and we need your help. Our success depends on it. The Cathar ambassador studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, with a slow nod, he spoke. Your bravery is undeniable, human. We will join your cause, but know this, should you fail, there will be no mercy for you or your kind. Elena's heart raced with relief, but she kept her composure. Thank you. We will not fail. As the negotiations continued, humanity's alliance with the Cathar was solidified, but the path to victory was far from clear. The Cathar provided humanity with new technologies, advanced weapons, and tactical intelligence, but their trust was not easily earned. The Cathar were a powerful ally, but one who demanded respect and loyalty in return. In the meantime, Elena sent emissaries to the Vesari and Elira, knowing that more alliances would be necessary to challenge the Dominion's overwhelming forces. The war was far from over, and humanity's journey to galactic power was just beginning. The victory at New Alexandria sent shockwaves across the galaxy, shaking the foundations of the intergalactic Dominion. Though it had been a minor battle, the success of the human resistance demonstrated that they were no longer the weak, submissive species the Dominion had once thought them to be. Now, the Dominion's leadership was forced to acknowledge humanity's resolve, and the decision was made to send a fleet to Earth, intent on quashing the rebellion once and for all. The rebellion's morale soared. Captain Elena Ward, despite knowing the overwhelming odds they faced, understood that this was humanity's moment to prove itself. Earth was the last line of defense, and it was time to show the galaxy that humans were more than just survivors, they were warriors. We will stand together, or we fall apart, Elena spoke to her troops before the battle, her voice calm yet filled with determination. This is the first of many wars, but it will not be our last. We will make them fear us. With that, the humans began their preparations. Their fleet was small, and their ships were mostly repurposed vessels, scavenged from the wreckage of previous Dominion conquests. But humans had a knack for improvisation, and in the face of overwhelming odds, their ingenuity had become their greatest weapon. The Dominion fleet arrived in Earth's orbit 2 days later. Their ships were enormous, towering metal behemoths capable of wiping out entire planets with the flick of a switch. But despite the size and power of the enemy's ships, humanity had learned a key lesson: brute force was not always the answer. "Let's show them what we can do," Elena said, her eyes locked on the giant enemy vessels from the bridge of her flagship, the Resolute. "They think they can crush us, but we have the one thing they'll never have: the will to fight." The first battle took place over the skies of Earth itself. The Dominion's massive warships began launching devastating energy beams at Earth's surface, trying to force humanity into submission. But instead of retreating, the human forces launched a full counteroffensive. It was an ambush, a tactic no one expected from a species that had just started learning the ways of war. Human fighters darted through the skies, weaving in and out of fire, while larger human ships focused on hit-and-run attacks. The Dominion's ships were powerful, but they were slow, and their commanders underestimated humanity's creativity and agility. One by one, human ships used the terrain of Earth's atmosphere to outmaneuver their attackers. Elena's flagship, the Resolute, was at the heart of the battle, coordinating the strikes with precision. "We have them on the ropes!" Lieutenant Lang shouted over the comms as another Dominion destroyer was torn apart by a barrage of missiles. But victory was never certain. For every Dominion ship that fell, another seemed to take its place. The sheer numbers of the enemy were overwhelming, and humanity's forces were running out of ammunition and fuel. As the battle raged on, Elena realized the fight was not just about destroying the enemy, it was about surviving long enough to push them back. "Focus on their engines," Elena commanded, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "We take out their power, and we win." In the heat of battle, human ingenuity once again shone through. A small fleet of human ships made a daring run on the enemy flagship, the Exemplar, the heart of the Dominion's forces. They knew they couldn't destroy it head-on, but if they could disable its power systems, it would buy them the time they needed to regroup. The human fleet's daring attack was a success. They penetrated the flagship's defenses, planting explosive charges at key locations in its engine room. With a series of explosions that shook the void of space, the Exemplar's engines went dark, and the massive warship began to drift helplessly. As the human ships retreated, the Dominion's fleet was left in disarray. Their flagship was crippled, their forces scattered, and their morale shattered. The rebellion had proven that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. Though it was only a small victory in a larger war, the battle over Earth was a turning point. Humanity's first war had been fought and won. The message to the galaxy was clear: humanity was no longer the weak prey it once had been. They had tasted victory, and the fires of rebellion would burn ever brighter. "We've won today," Elena said as she watched the retreating Dominion ships from the bridge. "But this is only the beginning. The galaxy will remember our name." And so, the first war was over. But the journey was far from complete. Humanity's rise to galactic power had just begun, and there were many more battles yet to be fought. As the alliance between humanity and the Cathar flourished, the resistance began to grow in strength. With new weapons, tactics, and intelligence, they made bold strides against the Dominion. The galaxy was changing, and the tide of war seemed to be turning in humanity's favor. But beneath the surface of these victories, a darker threat was emerging. Unbeknownst to Captain Elena Ward, the seeds of betrayal were already being sown within her ranks. The Cathar, while powerful allies, had not fully embraced humanity's cause. Despite their advanced technology and military expertise, their loyalty was still in question. The tensions between human leaders and Cathar commanders had been growing ever since the first diplomatic mission. There were whispers of dissatisfaction among Elena's inner circle, and some of the more ambitious members of her team began to question her leadership. It was during a high-stakes operation, a coordinated strike against one of the Dominion's remaining strongholds, that the betrayal first came to light. The plan was audacious. Using a fleet of newly acquired Cathar warships, Elena intended to launch a devastating attack on the Dominion's command center on the planet Arazar, a strategically important world at the edge of the galaxy. The operation was to be a joint effort, human ingenuity paired with Cathar military might. Success would cripple the Dominion's leadership and deal a heavy blow to their supply lines. The strike began as planned. Human forces, aided by the Cathar's advanced technology, infiltrated Dominion defenses with surgical precision. But just as victory seemed within reach, disaster struck. In the final moments of the operation, a sudden and unexpected attack came from within their own ranks. The Cathar warships, which had been instrumental in the operation, turned on the humans, opening fire on the Resolute and other human vessels. Captain Ward watched in horror as the Cathar ships, their cloaking technology rendering them invisible at first, launched a devastating ambush. The human fleet was caught off guard, and chaos ensued. Explosions rocked the human ships, and in the confusion, it became clear that the Cathar had been playing a dangerous game. This wasn't just a mistake or a miscalculation, it was deliberate. All units, engage the Cathar. Elena shouted over the comms, her voice filled with disbelief. They've betrayed us. Her officers scrambled to adjust to the new battle conditions, but the damage was done. The once unified front had been shattered, and now, humans found themselves fighting on two fronts, against the Dominion and their own allies. Amidst the chaos, Elena's ship, the Resolute, was struck by multiple energy blasts, its systems flickering dangerously. "Captain, we've lost power to the aft engines." Lieutenant Lang reported urgently, his voice filled with panic. "We're going to be sitting ducks if we don't regain control." Elena's mind raced as she quickly weighed her options. She had always trusted the Cathar, but now she realized that trust had been misplaced. She had underestimated the internal factions within her own alliance. Some believed that humanity's growing power posed a threat to their own supremacy and had decided to sabotage the mission. But who had been the traitor among them? As her ship limped through the battle, Elena turned to her second-in-command. "Lang, can you get us into range of their flagship? We need to take down their command." "We're too exposed, Captain." "It's a suicide mission," Lang replied grimly. "We have no choice. They're not just attacking us, they're trying to cripple the entire human rebellion." The decision was made. Despite the immense risk, Elena ordered a direct assault on the Cathar flagship, the Vindicator, hoping to cut off the head of the betrayal and regain control of the situation. With all remaining strength, the Resolute made a final charge, dodging fire and weaving through enemy ships. As the flagship came into range, Elena and her crew fought with everything they had. They fired on the Vindicator's power core, and in a glorious display of human tenacity, the flagship exploded, sending shockwaves throughout the battlefield. But even with their victory, the damage had been done. The human fleet was in disarray, and the loss of several ships and personnel was devastating. The Cathar had shown their true colors, their alliance with humanity had been a convenient facade. They had hoped to weaken humanity's resolve and sow discord within their ranks. While the immediate threat had been neutralized, the war had just become far more complicated. As the last remnants of the battle subsided, Elena stood alone in the quiet command center of the Resolute, staring at the debris of their once proud fleet floating in space. Her mind was a whirl of confusion, anger, and sorrow. Humanity had fought against the Dominion for their freedom, but now they faced an even more insidious threat, the fractured trust of their allies. "We've lost their loyalty," Elena muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "But we still have our own." She turned to her crew, who had gathered around her in silence. "This isn't over. We're going to make sure humanity's fight for freedom continues, no matter who stands beside us. We'll rebuild, and we'll take the fight to the Dominion. This betrayal won't stop us." But deep down, Elena knew that the true cost of this betrayal went beyond ships lost and lives shattered. The alliance that had once seemed like the key to humanity's survival was now in tatters. And the road ahead would be filled with even more treachery and peril than ever before. The aftermath of the betrayal by the Cathar was catastrophic. Humanity had taken a major blow, losing valuable ships, personnel, and, perhaps most importantly, the trust of their once allied species. With the Cathar gone, there was no time to dwell on the past. The Dominion had seen humanity's vulnerability, and they would not waste the opportunity to strike again. It was clear, humanity had to rise from the ashes of their betrayal or face extinction. Captain Elena Ward stood at the bridge of the Resolute, staring out at the war-torn expanse of space. The battle had cost them dearly, and Earth's remaining forces were scattered across the galaxy, reeling from the Cathar's treachery. But Elena was not one to surrender in the face of adversity. "We rebuild. We regroup. And we take the fight to them, harder than ever before," Elena said, her voice low but filled with a fire that could not be extinguished. Her crew, battle-hardened and loyal, nodded in agreement. The words were more than just orders, they were a rallying cry. Humanity had come this far by overcoming the impossible, and there was no stopping them now. The first step in their recovery was re-establishing communication with the remaining human resistance groups. A series of covert transmissions went out, reaching the farthest corners of the galaxy. Elena knew that the galaxy still harbored hope for humanity's survival, and it was time to tap into that hope. Within weeks, dozens of ships responded, some old allies, others new. Some were humans who had lived on distant colonies and fled from the Dominion's oppression, while others were survivors of the Cathar betrayal who had managed to escape. But one thing was clear, the human race was united in its defiance. As Earth's scattered forces gathered once more, Elena realized that their next move would be different from any battle they had fought before. The war had evolved. It was no longer just about defending Earth or surviving the Dominion. Humanity was fighting for a future, for the entire galaxy. In a hidden bunker deep beneath the surface of Earth's last remaining city, Elena met with the leaders of the new coalition. It was a fragile alliance, held together by desperation and mutual interest, but it had to be enough. "We've lost a lot," Elena said, addressing the gathered leaders. "And we've been betrayed by those we trusted. But we still have our strength. We have our unity. And we have something the Dominion will never understand, a deep, unshakable will to fight. We're going to show them that Earth isn't just a planet to conquer. It's a symbol of the galaxy's will to rise." The coalition agreed on a singular course of action. The galaxy had long been ruled by the Dominion's iron fist, but the true power in the galaxy lay not in the weapons of the mighty but in the hearts of the oppressed. Humanity was now ready to lead that charge, with Earth as the beacon of hope for all the downtrodden species. The time had come to create the new order. Under Elena's leadership, humanity spearheaded a new alliance, one that was not just focused on winning the war, but on changing the structure of the galaxy itself. The goal was to establish a galactic federation of free worlds, where no species, human or alien, would be ruled by a tyrant. It would be a place where the will of the people could rise above the forces of oppression. But to achieve this vision, Elena knew that they would need more than just weapons and tactics. They would need to win the hearts and minds of the galaxy's inhabitants. It wasn't enough to defeat the Dominion, they had to show the galaxy what a future without tyranny could look like. Humanity's new crusade began with a series of speeches broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. Elena, standing before a massive audience in the heart of Earth's capital, declared humanity's vision for the future. "Together, we have suffered under the yoke of tyranny," Elena said, her voice strong and unwavering. "But now we rise. We rise to build a future for all species, where freedom reigns, and no one is subjugated. We will no longer be a footnote in the history of the galaxy. We will be its future." The message resonated across the galaxy. Colonies and oppressed worlds that had long been under the Dominion's thumb began to rally to humanity's cause. Small but powerful uprisings took place on dozens of planets. These worlds were ready to stand together and defy the Dominion. The Dominion, however, did not sit idly by. Realizing that humanity's movement was gaining strength, they began to intensify their attacks. Entire sectors of the galaxy were placed under martial law, and the Dominion's propaganda machine went into overdrive, vilifying humanity's efforts. The battle lines were drawn. It was no longer just about the rebellion of Earth, it had become a galactic struggle for freedom. The fate of the galaxy was now in the hands of those who believed in the power of unity and the strength of resistance. Humanity had already shown that they could stand alone against the Dominion. Now, they would show that they could lead the charge for an entirely new order. "We are not just fighting for Earth," Elena declared in a message to her people. We are fighting for every world that has ever been oppressed. This is our war. This is our galaxy. And we will fight until the last breath to see the dawn of a new era. As the new order began to take shape, the galaxy's tides began to turn. The Dominion's grip on power started to slip, and for the first time in centuries, the galaxy saw a glimpse of hope. Humanity had become not just a survivor, but a leader in the fight for a better future. The Galactic War had reached its most critical juncture. Humanity, now united with its new allies, stood on the precipice of a future where the Dominion's rule was no longer assured. The Dominion had underestimated humanity's resolve, and in doing so, had ignited a firestorm that was rapidly consuming their empire. Captain Elena Ward, though battle-worn, had never been more focused. The Dominion's leadership had realized that they could no longer afford to wait for humanity's growing rebellion to fester. In a final, desperate bid to crush the revolution, the Dominion's forces began an all-out assault on the core worlds, the very heart of the galaxy, where the majority of the galaxy's resources, commerce, and political power were concentrated. The core was a jewel of unimaginable wealth and influence. If the Dominion could seize it, they could snuff out humanity's growing rebellion once and for all. If humanity could hold the core, it would be their ultimate victory, the moment that would seal their rise to galactic power. Elena had been preparing for this moment for years. The stakes were higher than ever before. The fate of the galaxy rested in the hands of humanity and its allies. The Dominion is coming, Elena said grimly to her fleet's commanders. We have one chance to stop them. If they take the core, it's over for us. We won't have another shot at this. The battle for the core would be unlike any that had come before. This was no mere skirmish, this was the final showdown. The Dominion's massive fleets were assembling at the outer edges of the core worlds, ready to strike. The defenders of humanity and their allies had no choice but to stand and fight. The human fleet, bolstered by a coalition of liberated worlds, was positioned just beyond the core's borders. Every ship, every crew member, every soldier was ready for the most important battle of their lives. The energy on the Resolute was palpable as Elena paced back and forth on the bridge, her mind working through every strategy, every contingency. They couldn't afford any mistakes. We'll hold them here, at the edge of the core, Elena said, turning to her senior officers. The moment they breach the perimeter, we'll launch everything we have. The enemy was formidable. The Dominion's warships, equipped with technology far beyond humanity's own, were a terrifying sight. Their fleet included several battleships that dwarfed anything humanity had ever fielded, each one capable of devastating entire fleets in a matter of minutes. But humanity had learned, and it had adapted. It was a battle of wills as much as it was of firepower. The Dominion had the advantage in numbers, but humanity had the heart and the determination to see this war through to the end. The battle began with a massive exchange of fire. Missiles, laser beams, and plasma bolts lit up the stars as the fleets clashed. Elena's ship, the Resolute, led the charge. All units, engage at maximum power, she commanded, as the ship's cannons fired on full throttle. The human forces had long since adapted Dominion technology to their own ships, making them much more agile and maneuverable. The Dominion, with their massive but slower warships, were not prepared for the speed and precision of the human fleet. The battle raged for hours, the sound of explosions reverberating across the ships. The Resolute took heavy fire, but its shields held. Elena's tactical brilliance kept the fleet in formation, striking fast and retreating just as quickly. The human fleet was relentless, pushing the Dominion back, forcing them to regroup. But despite humanity's resolve, the Dominion's reinforcements were close behind. From the depths of the core, the Dominion's hidden fleets emerged. Their flagship, the Obsidian Emperor, a warship so large it could block out the stars, led the charge. With its advanced weapons systems, it began cutting through the human lines like a blade through paper. We can't hold them back much longer, Lieutenant Lang said, his voice filled with concern as the Dominion flagship unleashed its devastating beam weapons on the fleet. Elena's eyes narrowed. We need to take down that flagship. If we can destroy it, we can break their morale. But getting to the Obsidian Emperor was no easy task. The flagship was heavily guarded, surrounded by hundreds of smaller warships that protected it like a wall. It seemed almost impossible. "We have no choice," Elena said, her voice calm but filled with determination. "We go in." Her plan was audacious. The Resolute would lead a suicide mission into the heart of the Dominion's fleet, aiming for the flagship's weak point, a tiny gap in its shields, barely visible to the naked eye, but enough for a well-placed shot to disable the entire ship. The crew of the Resolute prepared themselves for the mission of a lifetime. They knew this could be their final battle, but the risk was worth it. They had fought for too long, sacrificed too much, to stop now. "We'll take the fight to them," Elena declared. "We won't stop until the core is ours." With a roar of engines and weapons, the Resolute charged toward the flagship, dodging enemy fire as the crew unleashed every weapon they had. The fleet followed closely behind, covering their advance as best they could. Elena's heart pounded in her chest as she focused entirely on the task ahead. They breached the Dominion's defenses and finally came face to face with the Obsidian Emperor. Elena and her crew fired with everything they had, sending waves of concentrated fire into the flagship's exposed weak point. The flagship shuddered under the assault, its massive shields faltering. Then, with a brilliant flash of light, the Obsidian Emperor exploded in a blaze of fire. The Dominion fleet faltered. The loss of their flagship sent ripples of panic through their forces. For the first time in the battle, humanity's forces had the upper hand. The remaining Dominion ships began to retreat, their morale shattered by the destruction of their most powerful vessel. Elena stood on the bridge of the Resolute, breathing heavily as the final explosions subsided. They had done it. The core had been secured. But as the wreckage of the Dominion fleet drifted into space, Elena knew this victory was only the beginning. The war wasn't over, not by a long shot. The Dominion might have been beaten back for now, but there were still battles to fight. Still worlds to free. The road ahead would be long. But humanity had proven something to the galaxy, that they were no longer mere survivors. They were warriors, leaders, and the future of the stars. The battle for the core had been a turning point. Humanity had secured its place among the stars, and the Dominion, once an unstoppable force, was now on the retreat. Yet, Elena Ward knew better than to rest on their laurels. The galaxy was still rife with uncertainty, and while the victory was hard-earned, the true challenge lay ahead, rebuilding the galaxy and forging a future free of tyranny. In the aftermath of the core battle, humanity and their allies held a council on the planet Andromeda, a peaceful world that had long been a neutral ground for galactic diplomacy. It was here that the leaders of the new Galactic Alliance would come together, not just to celebrate their victories, but to define the future of the galaxy. Elena stood at the center of the gathering, her face hardened by the trials they had endured, yet her eyes reflected the hope that had bloomed in the wake of victory. Across the massive hall, representatives from liberated worlds, the Andari, the Zyrex, the Nar, sat in rapt attention, eager to discuss the future. "The Dominion is no more," Elena began, her voice echoing in the grand hall. "But the scars they've left behind will take time to heal. We're not just fighting for our survival anymore. We're fighting to ensure that no one ever has to live under the shadow of an empire again." The room was silent, the weight of her words sinking in. They all knew the importance of this moment. With the Dominion crippled and on the run, it was now time to rebuild the galaxy into something better. A place where freedom, democracy, and justice would prevail, not just for humanity, but for all races. The galaxy's future will be determined by the alliances we build, the trust we earn, and the unity we maintain, Elena continued. This is our chance to create something that outlasts us all. A federation of worlds, where no one is oppressed, and where every species has a voice. It's a future we can all build together. The proposal was met with applause, not just from humanity's leaders, but from every corner of the room. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy's inhabitants were united in a common cause, the creation of a new order, a free and just galaxy. But even as the celebration continued, Elena's mind never strayed far from the task at hand. There would be those who would resist the idea of a united galaxy, those who still clung to the old ways. The remnants of the Dominion's loyalists were still out there, lurking in the shadows, ready to strike again. "We've won the war," Elena said, her voice steady. "But the peace is only just beginning." In the weeks that followed, the formation of the Galactic Federation became the driving force of the new order. Earth, along with their allies, led the effort to establish a council, one that would govern the galaxy not with fear and oppression, but with respect for every civilization, every race. The old divisions that had plagued the galaxy for centuries, humans versus aliens, oppressor versus oppressed, began to fade as cooperation and diplomacy took root. But peace, as always, was fragile. The remnants of the Dominion's forces, though broken, still posed a threat. Small pockets of resistance clung to their power, and Elena knew that they would need to be dealt with swiftly to prevent another uprising. Humanity, with its allies, took to the stars once more, dismantling the last vestiges of the Dominion's influence, ensuring that their defeat would be permanent. One by one, the Dominion's loyalists were defeated, their strongholds falling as new alliances were forged. The galaxy began to stabilize, but it was a long process, a process that required every race, every civilization, to make sacrifices for the greater good. On Earth, the Council's first meeting was held in the new capital, a shining beacon of humanity's determination. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered to discuss the future of their shared space. Elena was elected to be the first Chancellor of the Galactic Federation, not out of a desire for power, but because she embodied the strength, resolve, and unity that had gotten them this far. Standing before the Council, Elena looked out at the faces of the beings who had once been her enemies, but were now her allies. "We've proven that humanity can rise above the impossible," she said. "But our true strength lies not in our victories, but in our ability to unite in the face of adversity. The galaxy is ours to shape, and it is time we build it together." The galaxy, once ruled by the oppressive hand of the Dominion, was now entering a new age, one defined by cooperation, mutual respect, and an unwavering commitment to freedom. The Federation that emerged from the ashes of war became a beacon of hope to all those who had once lived in fear. Humanity, from its humble beginnings, had risen to lead the stars. It was a journey that had begun with a single spark of rebellion and had culminated in the creation of a new order, one where the power of a united galaxy was no longer just a dream, but a living, breathing reality. But as Elena gazed out at the stars from the balcony of the new capital, she knew that the journey was far from over. The galaxy was vast, its potential limitless, and there would always be new challenges on the horizon. But humanity had proven one undeniable truth: they were not just survivors. They were creators, leaders, and now, the guardians of the galaxy's future. And as the first stars of the new era began to shine bright in the galaxy's skies, Elena's voice echoed across the vastness of space: "This is only the beginning." This concludes Beyond the Stars, the incredible journey of humanity to galactic power and glory. The journey of humanity has come full circle, from humble beginnings to galactic leaders, and the future remains bright for all those who dare to dream.